Hey everyone, it's Shawn McBride. Welcome to another edition of Best in Events. We are talking to Rosemary Vaughan today, my partner Deirdra and I, and we're going to be exploring what's happening with the gift side of events. A lot of disruption, as you can imagine. We're all trying to figure out what's happening with the economy as we go through these shifts. Events are virtually shut down, but it's creating some unique challenges. First, you're not physically there to move gifts and pass gifts, but also now we're having more and more virtual events, so that's going to put some pressure and changes on things as well. So we're going to explore that today and kind of look at where we are now. And as is tradition of the show, we're also going to be looking to the future and what we might anticipate in the future. So Rosemary, thanks for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Why don't you give folks just a little background on what you do and
Sure,
how do you help
absolutely.
people at events?
Okay, so I come from a background in events and hospitality. Mostly, I started out mostly in hotels and hotel management, concierge and chef concierge and all sorts of goodies like that. I did end up going into event management. And then I spent a few years doing mostly entertainment events before I slipped over into sort of the supplier side of it. So most of my career has been on the supplier side and mostly in audiovisual. So I've been an AV girl. So I was working with a particular AV company, and I had decided back in 2016 that I could see the emerging trend of buying local. So I wanted to sort of pull that, but also I'm not very artistic myself. My daughter is very artistic. I know a lot of artistic people or people who have massive talent, and I really recognize and appreciate that. So I started to sort of see that there would be an opportunity to work with events, particularly conferences for speaker gifts and dignitaries gifts and maybe delegate gifts if you had the right kind of budget, and sort of matching that up to concierge, or sorry, to it's like a concierge service, so to Canadian artisans. So as you're going into, let's say, Vancouver, then we can work with Vancouver-based artisans. Or maybe it doesn't need to necessarily be nice if it's that localized, but then it would be nice if it was, something from Canada anyways. It depends on the theme and all that sort of thing. So I spent a whole year just building my Shopify platform. I was going to make it an online store. I did all the work that was necessary. And then in July 2017, I took the big leap and just decided to quit my job and focus on this exclusively. And it's been pretty good. So I work with about 250 artisans from coast to coast. So far we've commissioned about 5,100 gifts, put about $240,000 into the Canadian artisan economy. And it's been pretty good. Yeah, it's been really a rewarding experience.
Yeah, so okay, like a good background. So you're, based on that background, of course, I'm connecting the dots that you're kind of in the know of what's happening with events, at least what the existing norms have been up until kind of this magic date, whenever that was, early 2020, when everything kind of came to a grinding halt.
Yes.
And so up until this magic date, you kind of were in the flow. And so,
Yeah.
just what's happened. I mean, obviously events have shut down, and I guess that means that people aren't thinking about the same things, right?
Well, and they're really not. So I think, initially the problem that we're experiencing more than anything is the amount of shell shock that people are going through, right? So just the immense change in people's lives and the fear and not knowing, what tomorrow brings, and not knowing if bills are going to be paid. And for corporations and associations, cash at this point is king, right? We need to hold on to your cash. Like that's what everybody's telling them to do. So the idea of gifts, and yes, there still could be a movement in gifts, but not with events. Sure, I mean, more and more events are going online. So instead of shipping all, having all of those gifts delivered to a venue, now they're going to go individually, perhaps to where people live or whatever. And it could be done, but it's not being done, and it is what it is. And it's a word sort of sitting in that, short-term area where there's not a lot of movement, And I even look at like a major company, promotional products company, that are down by 80%. It's an awful lot, at the end of the day. So they're all feeling it. And I'm just one person. So I'm at zero, nothing's happening. And that's fine. It is what it is. It's, short-term pain for long-term gain. That's hopefully, in working with business and making those, critical decisions now in terms of what's going to happen moving forward. forward, right? So, and we're all in that same boat.
Yep. I can certainly, what you're telling me makes a lot of sense. And I think, probably, gifts are an important part of kind of memorializing the event. It's part of the feel of the event. And I think as people move suddenly virtual, and I think a lot of the virtual events that are happening weren't really planned to be virtual events, right? They're emergency virtual events. They're quick switches to emergency events. So I don't think the thinking has caught up with that.
Certainly no, and it certainly wouldn't, and I also think that whole face-to-face thing where you're actually physically handing, you don't get a whole lot of speaker gifts that get room dropped. You actually get a lot of them that are handed, right? And so it's that whole interaction. It's it's a celebrated thing, a part of culture, I guess, of what we do, right? And so it kind of feels a little bit different. Where you're just kind of like, okay, well, we'll get you a gift, and it's just it's going to arrive on your doorstep. I mean, fine, but it's not the same. Yeah.
Well, it's not the same experience.
Yeah.
And it's also not the same moment, right? I mean, you don't have the cameras there. You don't have the ceremony. You certainly probably don't have that surprise. A lot of times, sometimes it's just in a surprise situation.
Sure.
So yeah, Deirdra, on your planning side, how does this come in on planning? I mean, so now, obviously, as people are starting to think about virtual events and temporarily being apart from each other, where does this kind of gift giving process come into your planning?
Well, I think as Rosemary indicated, for virtual events, one, do you ship direct to the attendee? Or the other thing is, do you forego and even on your website kind of have a shopping cart for the gift that you want, right? So you have a number of gifts that you can present to them, and then it's, unfortunately, in a lot of cases like that, it's going to end up being drop shipped.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that will definitely take away from the revenue of people like Rosemary, because unless it's something specific that has a corporate name on it.
Yes.
Sure.
So that's the conundrum for the gift giving, is whether or not, because I know we see this a lot with incentive groups where they may have a shopping cart for gifts and things that they can, for example, for dealer programs, here's a list of things that you can get for your incentive program.
Right.
And that definitely can be done. I mean, it's, that's the way that I formulate my proposals, because I have a Shopify store, but because most of my clients were coming to me and just sort of saying, here, Rosie, this is my budget and this is where we're going to be, what you got kind of thing, right? So the whole online shopping experience wasn't really happening. So I converted the whole platform to an opportunity to build a storefront for each customer. So, and then provide them with a whole bunch of choices, right? And all the details and everything. And then that way they can sort of go through it. So it definitely could still be done where I can create those stores for conferences and stuff. But at the end of the day, it just needs to be that that's the way that they want to roll with it, right? So it depends on what they want.
It's a cultural shift, right? Because, I mean, it was interesting, before all this broke down, I was in an attorney group and one of the attorneys was hosting an event and they've had people speaking at the event. And they're like, what do we give people, at the event? And it was very interesting watching the variety of opinions of what the right gift was. And you go to these events and, I find when I get a gift as a speaker, I like something that's unique. I like something that's different, something that encapsulates the event, right? Because that's kind of what you're looking for, right? If everything's the same or if everything just comes off a standard checklist, then, I've already got that. I've already seen that. Somebody else gave you that. But something really personalized, which is what you were talking about, Rosemary, that kind of gives it that unique feel, right? Now you remember that event. Now you remember what happened.
Absolutely. And everything needs to be customized. It's not just, picking something off the shelf. That's not the way we roll. And it's really nice to be able to work with a theme or color branding or whatever. We don't necessarily love to do logo branding on, that's not great, but it is what it is. You need to put a logo on something because it's sponsored or whatever, then that's fine. but it gives an opportunity for our artisans to be very creative, right? And come up with concepts and prototypes and stuff like that. And that often happens, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah, I can see the place as we start to look to the future. I mean, I certainly see a place for that, right? Even if it's drop shipped, like we've been talking about, right? If you don't have people physically together, or you have a, Deirdra and I have been talking a lot about regional events, which both of us think is probably going to be a trend.
Yes.
You still may have the possibility to ship it to people's house, or somebody that appears at a virtual event, have it come to them.
Yep.
And I think it'd still be special. It's changing the nature of it, right? You lose that surprise element, and you lose that picture moment, but it still may be very meaningful to people. A great way to say thank you.
I think one of the other things that might happen, and this kind of idea just came into my head, is that when you do get all of these items, generally you have to put them into a delegate bag or something like that. So I think what we'll find is, in regards to the gift giveaways for conferences, that it'll be asked of the supplier to individually pack
Yes.
each one, so that the less hands on it,
Yes.
the better. So that you just take it out of the box, you check one, you go, yep, they're all here, and then it goes back in the box.
Pretty much.
Pretty much, and then it gets distributed either through the delegate bags or at registration. Because generally what happens is you get all of these registration bags together, and you unpack all your t-shirts and you take them out of the cellophane. That's not something that's going to be done anymore, although you have to check, especially if it's branded, you do have to do a check to make sure that the logo is on there properly.
Yeah,
you
got to balance that quality control, which you're getting at, Deirdra, plus the physical touching, right? And at least from a logistical standpoint, I guess your point is very valid. If we don't know what the next thing after COVID-19 might be, everybody's certainly aware there could be another pandemic. This one seems to be, if you let it sit for 2 or 3 days or something, the virus dies. At least that's what we're hearing at this point. So if you pack that bag 3-4 days in advance and then let it sit, that should be safe. But that really changes your logistical side a lot.
It certainly does, and it adds to the overall cost, right? So the margins are much slimmer, and I mean, it depends on what that means to you, and whether again, it's like I said before, short-term pain for long-term gain. It is, you have to sometimes make sacrifices, right? So just to be able to keep the economy moving as much as you can, anyways. But
that's an early theme as we're starting the series. Deirdra and I are seeing is, the cost structure of events is probably changing, right? So now, your gift might cost the same, but the handling of the gift just went up in cost, right? So now you have to pack it early. You have to store it for a while so that any potential contaminants die, right? And then you got the spacing and the distancing. So, this is yet another area where you're layering in cost at the conference level.
Yeah. And then in terms of the whole distribution level, right? It's, I mean, for myself, it's pretty straightforward. You go right to an artisan, they work on it and they send it. But I mean, some of these really bigger gifting companies, their supply chains are all dried up. Like they can, even if they needed product, it's hard for them to even get it. So we're starting to see things starting to move a little bit more now, but realistically, it's still going to be quite a while. And there is the fear of those products coming in, and if they're contaminated on their packaging or the goods themselves, and so it's constantly that kind of battle that goes on. And it would appear that it shouldn't be a problem. It's been in shipping for a long time. I mean, the top 40 promotional product companies they all bring their stuff in from China. So that's
right.
Yeah.
And that's why they want 4 to 6 weeks.
Exactly.
But we know I've dealt with let's say 72 hours before an event, and I'm going, yeah, sure, I'll pull a rabbit out of my hat. But you make it work.
You do.
Rosemary, let me just ask you a question in regards to that, in regards to the shipping process, because being that we've both been on the event management side.
Yep.
A lot of times what happens is that as the host, the merchandise gets sometimes it's shipped direct from China to the host or to the venue,
Yeah.
and doesn't necessarily go back to the merchandise company or
Yes.
that you've purchased from. What are your
Yes.
thoughts on that? Do you think that'll change and it'll go direct to the merchandise company and then be shipped out to the
Well,
host?
so from a large company perspective, yes, I do believe it'll have to go to a centralized address and then be redistributed from there. So, and I do the same thing with my clients, right? If coming to Ottawa or whatever, then and I'm receiving it from Nova Scotia or where it's coming here, and then I'm gift wrapping everything and I'm getting it to. And my other cities, I'll do the same thing. I have gift ambassadors in every major conference city. So the items go to that person, they check through everything, they package it, and then they hand deliver it to the venue. And that's kind of the way that works, right? It's more of a white glove type of service.
Right.
But I think that very much so often it gets shipped directly to the venue from China or wherever it's coming from. And if it's going to have to go and discharge itself out to, individuals versus one address where it gets distributed from there, then yeah, that's going to be on the distributing company.
Which adds, of course, to the cost of the product, because now you got to ship it to the merchandise company. They got to go through it, and then they got to ship it to you. Who eats that additional shipping cost?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah. So it'll be built. That's right. It'll probably be built into the cost per item. Yes.
Yes, absolutely. No question about it.
The other thing we've been talking about is a lot of this is international. It's international commerce, right? We typically have a lot of particularly the lower end or less expensive gifts are coming from China.
Yes.
And I think there's some real questions about, at least in the U.S., I think there's early warning signs that the U.S.-China trading relationship may be changing.
That's for sure.
And and we have to wonder if that's going to happen for other countries in the world as well, right? So it may be, just from the memory of the problems this had, plus, whatever changes geopolitically, we may be moving to closer sourcing in the future.
Absolutely agree with that 100%. The economy, our own national economies have to be promoted, right? So that movement has to happen, and they're telling people, when you are ready to start traveling again, don't go anywhere outside of, well, you're in the US, but as Canadians,
Right.
Try to do your vacations in Canada, try to get that economy moving again, eat, locally and buy your stuff from Canada and all that sort of thing. So, and I do feel that there will be government supplementation that'll go into creating more manufacturing that happens in Canada of things that currently are distributed outside of Canada, and making it a little bit more affordable, because it is more expensive to buy nationally than it is to, let's face it. I mean, that's why my service really is for people who have a decent budget, right? It's not like you're coming to me and saying, well, I need, 100 pens at $3 a pop. Well, that's no, right? So it's just that's why we sort of focus more on speaker gifts and dignitary gifts and stuff, because it is a higher price point, and they are handcrafted. They're not produced, right? So it's a different thing. So I definitely think we're going to see a lot more of seeing sort of that CSR, right? That when you're buying, it's going to be to get back into moving our own economy and working with especially hard hit smaller businesses and that sort of thing, and just try to make it rework itself again.
Yeah, I think there's going to be a big shift. So I'll be curious to see, how quickly we spring back to some of the old traditions versus saying, you've mentioned kind of the nationalism or to take care of your own people, create jobs at home. I think that's going to be a big piece of it. I think there's also kind of this worry of international commerce and will it get disrupted again, because obviously we've had major disruptions in it. So a lot of pieces are probably going to push this perhaps towards more local source, right? Get it closer to the place, less chance of disruption, less chance of problems. And who knows where the national governments come in. But I know here in the US, one of the big questions is, okay, we do have a huge manufacturing base still, but it's taken a long time to make these masks and to get things rolling. And people are saying, why are we have to get all of our stuff manufactured in other countries? Why don't we have enough capacity here to do the thing we need to do? So there's kind of a military national defense piece of this.
No, absolutely. Yes.
That will then play into kind of our local manufacturing, right? Will there be incentives for manufacturing in Canada and the United States? I would not be surprised to see that come down the pipe.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with you on that for sure. It's going to be interesting. That is for sure. And then you sort of look at things like a lot of times too, the gifting is charitable giving, right? So are we going to see more charitable giving, or are we going to start to see just more focusing on, and it is charitable to a certain degree because it is working with those small businesses and those artisans or whatever that are trying to, sort of reaffirm themselves into the economy, and so it is charitable to its own degree. So we need to sort of understand, charitable, yes, absolutely, if you want to give to charity, by all means. I don't never say do not do that, because absolutely that needs to be done. But we're working and we're doing a lot of that charitable giving even now, right? And so at the end of the day, we need to sort of focus a little bit on making those connections again, or doing that emotional connections, or creating distractions or things that are fun, right? So it's all of those things sort of come into play, and they are beneficial to everybody involved regardless. So
I think one of the big questions that'll be asked, and as a planner, it's one of the questions I would bring up now moving forward, is this made locally? And locally by, I mean in Canada,
yes.
or in the US, because as brothers and sisters that we are, we buy cross-border all the
Absolutely.
time. And this will, I think this will change what type of items are ordered that possibly aren't made in US and Canada.
Right.
For our, from the event side, because yes, it is less costly to ship in from China, but there's also that hands-on.
Yeah. Very much so.
The risk, and then also kind of just the signaling, right? So if you buy it within U.S., Canada, right, then it's local. You're doing your thing. You're doing your part. So will there be a return to that? I think it'll be interesting to see. Rosemary, what else are you seeing out there that we haven't touched on today? Are there any big macro things you see might develop or might be happening based on what we're seeing today?
Well, we're trying to, look at what people are actually doing. So there, the creative aspect to being able to provide that kind of gifting, right? And so in terms of corporate stuff that's going on, particularly to employees, I guess,
Yeah.
we're starting to see more of that sort of thing that will happen, that is going to, it's practical gifts, right? In times of personal and economic hardship. I mean, let's face it, right? So just those care packages or spirit lifting packages. I've seen something called a telecommunication package, where they'll send it, because they're going to be on this, doing this all the time that we're doing. But it gives them, all these really cool tools to be able to sort of work with that, from screen cleaning to, just having food on the side or whatever. So it's kind of fun. Or kids. I mean, do they have kids at home? I mean, just sending a care pack just for the kids to have activities and stuff. I mean, you may think, oh, well, that's kind of weird for a speaker or something, but realistically, we love the hero at home thing, right? So my affiliation with my company or X number of organizations or whatever, and I'm able to bring up home cool things for my wife or for my kids or my husband or whatever it may be.
Yep.
We call it the hero at home effect, and it's great, right? And why not? So tap into that, and it actually means a whole lot more to the recipient at the end of the day than if it's something that's for them. So
I've heard many stories. Many stories of that over the years, where speakers have taken home a gift and their kid loves it or whatever, and the kid plays with it for 2 or 3 years, and they're like, "That was the best speaker gift ever."
Best speaker gift ever, absolutely. So I would totally agree with that, absolutely. So yeah, we talked a bit about the buy local movement. I mean, those things are really important, and we need to sort of work on that. Made to order productions. I mean, I've seen many stories of even, promotional product companies who work with like the distributor, so like a sportswear company or whatever, and they usually do, baseball caps, and they do t-shirts and stuff like that. And now, they've switched to doing, masks and gowns, but they're still working on their collaborative relationship as it stands, right? So you still have your manufacturer, still have your distributor, but they've just, that word that everybody's using now, they pivot, right? So, and here we are. So they're doing something that is a gift to society, let's face it. So it's still gifting, but it's kind of on a different scale. So it's kind of cool. And I like it when people are able to think outside the box and do something a little different.
That's cool. Well, you certainly have your pulse on it. I got to imagine there's going to be some meeting planners that have virtual events going on, or that are going to start rebooting their live events. And if they're looking to do something different or innovative with gifts, how do they find you? How do they check out your stuff, and how to get in touch with you?
Oh, well, yeah, sure. So the company name is Gift Revel, Revel, as in taking enormous pleasure in something. So essentially, you can find me on Instagram under Gift Revel. I'm under same on Facebook, giftrevel.com, any of those things. So, and I'm working on, I've taken this time right now because I'd already decided that I was going to move from more of that concierge into the online marketplace, and it's actually going to be kind of more Etsy style where clients are going to be able to connect directly with the artisans. So that's something I'm working on right now, to reboot my entire website. So that's a work in progress. And this timing actually is pretty good because February turned out to be my busiest month ever. So I was like, and then all of a sudden it went from that to the zip, right? So
it's a clip for many of us.
Right? Absolutely. So I'm very much looking forward to the fall and presenting something new, and just collaborating. And I collaborate with promotional product companies as well. I mean, you have to sort of know what's what, but I try to always make sure that the manufacturers are always Canadian. So that's really important to me.
Very good.
Yeah, thank you.
Go check out Rosemary's stuff. Deirdra and I will be back again with you very soon here on the Best of Events. Make sure you're subscribed to our YouTube channel so you can see the upcoming episodes, and make sure you follow both Deirdra and I on social media. Rosemary, I know we'll probably circle back with you at some time in the future. So thanks for being here and providing some value and getting people thinking. Our goal is to kind of get these conversations going, help the industry build collaboration and partnerships, move things to the next level. And thank you for being part of that.
Thanks very much.
Thank you, everybody. We're glad you're here. We will see you very soon. Give us your comments and we will be in touch.
Thank you.